Bella Mahaya Carter, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here with you.
Likewise. So, when your book came across my desk, Where Do You Hang Your Hammock? I knew that I wanted to interview you from the moment because your book is all about the subtitle, Finding Peace of Mind While You Write, Publish, and Promote Your Book. So I need this so badly right now because I'm also in the midst of this. And there's a lot of listeners who are actually also in the midst of working on their books too. So your work could not have come at a better time.
I'm so happy to hear that. And I'm curious, what kind of a book are you writing?
Well, right now, I'm still in the early stages, but right now the working title is Failure is a Sacred Right.
Oh, I love that.
Thank you. And it is the intersection between failure and growth, failure and learning, failure and entrepreneurship, failure and creativity. So, somewhere in all of that is the idea that it is only through trying and not getting it right that we get to where we're supposed to be.
Alicia, I'm going to take you on a deep dive.
Let's go. I'm with you.
I'm going to say to you that failure does not exist.
Ooh. All right, let's go there. Keep going.
Failure is a thought.
Mm.
It's a construct of the conditioned mind.
Mm.
Okay, it's not who we are. And it's not in what we
first chapter.
Right. Right. Not only isn't it who we are, but it's not even what we do. Like when we're learning it, like you wouldn't say to a baby who's trying to walk and they fall down, you wouldn't say, oh my God, you're such a failure.
Mm.
Because you would understand that in the walking process, there has to be falling down. And this is true for the living process. If we are to take risks, take chances, if we are just to simply live, some things will work out and some things won't work out. But we live in this culture that tells us that this is what success looks like and this is what failure looks like. But they're really just ideas and they limit us. They don't allow us to actually just embrace all of it. I remember when I was in my early 40s, I believed that I had failed. I had all these books in my file cabinet, nothing was published. And I really was just at a low point in my life. And I enrolled in this program in spiritual psychology at the University of Santa Monica. And I remember like I went in there thinking I am a failure. And one of the teachers had said, there's no such thing as failure. There are only opportunities for growth. And as I've grown in my awareness of who I am and what I'm doing, I've discovered that is absolutely the truth. There is no failure, but we make up stories about failure and then we believe them. And then we're hijacked by our stories about failure. And then we begin to think, I am failure.
Right.
You know, in other countries, like in Spanish, you know, they would say, I have fear, not I am fear.
Right. And you know what? I honed right in very first page of the very first chapter. I honed in on, in your book, you said, you are not your successes or failures. I honed in on that because that's the lens I see everything through right now. And that is kind of one of the biggest points of the book that I'm making. It's that I do believe that there are times where we don't hit the goal that we've set for ourselves. And that is a failing, but that doesn't make us a failure, is how
absolutely. And maybe it's not even a failing, right?
Right.
Maybe it's just, this is the process. And, you know, maybe I don't have to judge it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And maybe it's the judging that's the internalizing and the judging that's really where the problem comes in. But the failure piece, the failing, the not hitting the mark is not a positive or a negative thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Bella, tell me, why this book and why now? Why did you feel the need to birth this?
Honestly, this book birthed me. I did not feel the need to birth this book. This book just came out of me. It exploded out of me like a big fart. Okay. It just came out. And I'll tell you the story of how it came to be. My publisher at She Writes Press, Brooke Warner, said to me a few years ago, you ought to write a book on your blog. Like, you ought to turn your blog into a book. And I thought, well, why would I want to do that? People are reading my blog. Like, why would I want to do that? I didn't really understand why I would want to do that. And then after I had finished my memoir and finished promoting it, I thought, well, gee, I wonder if I could turn my blog into a book. That wouldn't, the memoir took 5 years to write and it was gut wrenching. But this seems like this could be maybe like an easy project, like just a kind of an in-between project, in between serious projects. So I took a look at my blogs, and I've been keeping a blog for 10 years. And I started cataloging the posts. And I realized that most of them, not all of them, most of them fit into one of 5 categories. And the book is divided into these 5 parts. So it's it's dream, nourish, write, publish, and promote. Mm-hmm. And then I started just assigning different pieces to the different sections. And I put it all together and I read it and I was like, oh, you can't just string blog posts together and make a book. There needs to be a unifying principle. There needs to be about something. And that principle has to go through the entire book. And no sooner did I have that awareness that I made this connection about a story that happened with my hammock and a parallel, how my publishing journey paralleled that story. Mm. And then I was just off and running, and I actually put the book together. Now, I will say that when I read the strung together blog posts, I saw gaping holes, I saw redundancies. So I had to write stuff, and then when the pandemic hit, I thought, okay, now I have to include virtual launches. So I was writing stuff. But I would say that the book really came together in a couple of weeks. It was amazing. And I was writing like 8 hours a day and not doing anything else. I would get out of bed, I would come right into my office. Like I didn't want to stop to pee. I didn't want to stop to eat. I didn't take a shower. I was just like possessed.
Wow. I will say I had been trying to write a book prior to what I'm doing now. When I started coaching, I thought, okay, I have to have credibility, and most people do that through a book, right? Writing a book. And so I started, and it was such a slog. I felt like I was squeezing blood from a rock. And so I now have 25,000 words of something that is not a book. And it's there. There's concepts that are interesting. There are some metaphors that are interesting. It's my coaching process, but it's not a book. And so I had to get that out of it's almost like it's a version of morning pages, right? Like it was my morning pages to prepare me for what I'm doing now. But when I was working on that book and people would say the book just came out of me, I'd get so jealous. But now that I feel like I understand what the through theme is, now I'm more feeling that. Like I can't wait to sit down and write.
I could take you in so many different directions. So let's see what is wanting to be. Okay. So what I want to say to you first is that the book that took 2 weeks to write, I was writing for 10 years.
Right.
So that's really important. And going back and looking at that writing that I've been doing for the past 10 years with the perspective of what I've learned, say, in the last few years, and organizing it thematically rather than chronologically, created its own energy and momentum. So that's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say is that 25,000, you never are wasting a moment with any writing that you do. And while those 25,000 words might not look to you like a book, or even a manuscript. So a manuscript is different from a book. So manuscripts, the way manuscripts are created is just piece by piece. Annie Lamott says bird by bird.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a very slow process. So don't look at what you have. Don't look at your pages. Let's call them your pages.
Mm-hmm.
Don't look at your pages as if and expect them to look like a book. It
Right.
doesn't mean you're not on the right track. It's just the expectation of this is supposed to look, oh, this doesn't look like a book. Oh, this isn't. So that doesn't matter. It's not supposed to. I'll give you an example. My last blog post. So I was asked a question at my launch event about collaboration. And I, like, what do you think? Can you tell us, it was my publicist, and she said, you're such a good collaborator. Can you tell us about that process? And honestly, I kind of deflected the question and not, and I just praised people I was working with. And it wasn't that I was being generous. It was that it was a deep question and it required thought. So I thought about it and I decided, okay, I'm going to write a blog post about this. It's going to come out probably this week. And I never know with my writing if it's any good or not. I have an editor. I send her my stuff and, I sent it to her and she happened to really like this, but I never know. But the way I started it and the way I do a lot of my writing is, I might just like be in the hammock and I might write a couple of notes. I might get a couple of ideas and I'll jot them on a piece of paper. And then I'll come to the computer and I'll just type up the notes. And it's like notes. Mm-hmm. It's just vague notions. It's just ideas. And then I just I'll flesh it out and I'll leave it maybe I'll leave it open on my computer. I'll go away. I'll come back. I'll look at it in the morning when I wake up and I'll just keep tinkering with it until I feel done.
Yeah.
Until I feel like, okay, the tinkering is done. I'll send it to my editor and see what she thinks.
It's so interesting. I have two thoughts as well on everything you just said. So thought number one is I'm in a book writing program now around this idea. And the whole first 4 weeks have really been about author mindset and creating the tools to create the process, which I thought was pretty incredible. And so I'm already feel like I understand what the process is way better than I did the first go around that just created pages. And he calls it snippets, what you just called of he's like, people don't write books the way you think they write books. You can first compile all of these snippets. And
yes.
I thought this is really interesting.
Was there a second point before I add to this?
Yes. So my second point is that what you're getting at too is something that I noticed in reading your book is that your book is and I know you have that spiritual background that's a little bit like mine. It feels like the eightfold path of writing. Like you gave us the middle way of writing. And I love it.
I want to encourage you to take one of my classes. Seriously. And I'll tell you why. So author mindset is great, but it's something that when you're actually writing, I want you to throw away. I don't want you to think when you sit down to write, okay, I have to be in an author mindset. No. So what you also need, in addition to snippets, is you need time to just to be a vessel. Mm-hmm. You need time to let loose, let go of all your expectations, and allow whatever is wanting to be expressed through you to come through. And you do that, you need a very safe space to do that. You do it by slowing down and understanding that whatever insecure thinking you have is what I call universal doubt. We all have it. Yes. I have it, my students have it, my clients have it, everyone I know has it. And writers have it in spades. So whatever thinking you're having that is not supporting what your goal is not reliable.
Right.
It's okay that it's there. But I would encourage you to just say okay, I see you. I know that you're there. I'm sorry you're feeling insecure. But you know what? I'm going to go ahead and write this anyway. because it's something I need to do. I need to answer this call. I need to say yes.
Yeah, you talk about that in the beginning of right in the first chapter, like who do you think you are? And the thoughts that come up, the not supposed to get too big for our britches and not supposed to shine too brightly. And I think that something that does trip up a lot of us first time authors is that who am I to write a book
Right.
question.
Yeah. And I would like, don't even like, I mean, this might sound weird, but don't even think of yourself as an author. That's
Mm,
too big. And it's also like it's one thing to be a writer and it's another thing to be an author.
mm,
So as a writer, your job is to get words on paper.
mhm,
As an author, your job is to get out there and communicate with people so that they know about your book, so that if they're looking for support and
mhm,
you're providing it, you're being a bridge. You're helping them find you, and most importantly, you're helping them find work that will help them. So that's your job as an author. So you're thinking in your author mindset, thinking about being an author while you're trying to get words on the page.
mm.
It's just, that's not where you are right now.
Yeah, and the book writing program that I'm in is actually incredible. And when I say author mindset, it is more about like what are the tools that you need to be successful. So it's not like
Good.
author mindset, but it's like how do you conduct interviews and really how do you find supporting evidence and how do you find snippets. So it's learning all of the things that go into writing a story that you might not realize when you're a first time author.
Yeah, and I want you, like, all that is important. And the reason why I said I want you to take my class, even if you're involved in this program, is because what we do in my class, right where you are, the art of being present on the page,
Yeah.
is it's just a small group of people getting together and writing and sharing what we write. Well, I don't share what I write, but they share what they write. And then, the purpose is for everybody there to listen and celebrate you and to tell you what they appreciate about what they've heard. Because what I've discovered is that most of us, we don't know the value of what we've written. We don't see our own gifts, and we can't evaluate that. So we actually need to be told, wow, Alicia, that is so beautiful. This part here really touched me. And then if you want critical feedback, if you want to know where you can go or how you can grow, then I'll step in and make some, and give you some direction. But for me, those groups, the writing circles, they're all about nourishment and
Mm,
support and being held so that you can step out on a limb. You can have times where, we usually go write for 20 minutes. And you'd be amazed at how much writing you can get done in 20 minutes. And it's don't think right. I mean, it's absolutely, I don't know if you know Natalie Goldberg and Writing Down the Bones, the classic writing book. But it's just write without, write so fast that your thinking mind can't come in and judge and condemn and interfere with your creative flow, with your remaining open and allowing what wants to come through you to come through you. And that process, once you understand that practice and you're involved with that practice in a regular way, that the product doesn't matter. The product is excrement of process.
mm.
When you're in that process, product takes care of itself. So you need to be able to know, yes, snippets are good, but you need to be able to sit down for 20 minutes or 30 minutes at a time and compose, just like let it come through you without any interruption. And then have people say, wow, that's amazing. And you'll say, really? Like, I didn't know that.
I love that. I love that. And I couldn't agree more with you. I've been in circles that were about nourishment, and that you're spot on with that. It's so important to get feedback. I mean, I think it's part of why writing blog posts, it's so satisfying because you get such immediate feedback if you're willing to like put it out there. And then in the internet social media spheres, like you'll get some really immediate feedback on what you're
True.
saying. No, not always nourishing, but the feedback is nice because oh, I hit something that connected or I didn't.
Right. I want to say something about what you said earlier about credibility.
Yeah.
So the ultimate authority for each one of us resides within us.
Yes.
And we tend to look for authority outside of us.
Mm.
Um, I remember when I was a young poet and I wanted to also be a writing teacher, but I didn't have a book published. And I felt like I needed to have a book published to be a writing teacher.
Mm.
But what I learned after I, had the book was published, I became a writing teacher, I realized after some time, actually teaching and writing are two different skill sets.
Mm.
And I would have been just as good a teacher without that book. I've studied with famous authors who were terrible teachers. I've
Mm.
studied with not so great writers who were fantastic teachers. So, and and the credibility, yeah, I mean, like, I thought I needed that book to make me credible, but really I think in the long run what made me credible was just the work that I did.
Work. Yeah, absolutely.
Because no amount of, like, if you can have a book and it can even be a great book, but credibility, I mean, again, that's kind of an outside in
Mm.
uh perspective. And I don't knock you, because I've lived most of my life through that paradigm.
Well, it's interesting. It reminds me of Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist, right? In that sometimes we have to go on the even if we know intellectually, we have to go on the journey to get the message.
You're so right. You are so beyond your years. I don't know how old you are, but you are wise beyond your years. That is true. We
Well,
do.
okay, you talk a lot about play and enjoying ourselves in the process. Can you talk to us about why that's so important in this process of writing and publishing and promoting?
Yeah, I mean, for so many years, I just took it all so seriously, and I took myself so seriously. And the problem was, and I heard you talk about this on your podcast, a recent podcast. I don't remember who you were talking to, your friend. I don't remember her name, but we tend to fuse our self-worth with our achievements, and you know that. And I did that for years and years, and it's a misunderstanding. It's an
Mm,
innocent misunderstanding. Uh,
it gets me.
I know, me too. Me too. And I still do it, like I still do it. Like, my publicity campaign is about to come to an end, and I'm like, I really enjoyed this, and I really like all of it, and like, how is it going to be when it's over?
Mm,
And but then I'm thinking, I'm just gonna, like, life is just the same. I mean, the life is the same in terms of it's a big playground.
mm.
And my job is to show up and just go on the swings and go on the teeter totters and go on the slide and just have fun and explore and experiment. And I mean, to me, the ultimate success is like being able to do the work that I love and share it with others.
I That really resonates with me for some of the reasons you alluded to, but I could use the reminder to play like morning, noon, and night,
I
to be
know.
honest.
I hear you. I think you wrote somewhere, I don't know where, I follow you on Instagram. I love your Instagram, and I listen to your podcast. And uh I don't know if it was you, I don't know if it was you who said something about being a workaholic. I don't know if that was you,
Might have been.
but the problem with that is just, I mean, there are obvious problems with that. But again, it's a misunderstanding. It's like we look to our work. I mean, look, my work is fun, so I love to work, right? And I love to guide people, and I meet them where they are and then help them grow. It's just fun. It's just wonderful, wonderful work. And I love to write. But none of that defines me.
Mm,
And none of it makes me more or less valuable than anybody else.
yeah. No, Bella, that right there is something that I'm personally grappling with so much because my work is fun. I'm one of those weirdos, like I have to feel really intimately connected to what I do. I know I don't want people to think they have to do it that way. That's just the way I'm wired. But then that creates a whole other sack of challenges
Yes.
because then I intertwine all of the things that are fun and play into work. So the line gets so blurred
Right.
of what's fun and what's play. And so pulling out those things that are for ourselves that are just play for the sake of play are so important.
Yeah. But the thing is that I think it really is, it has to do with, I'm the same way, by the way. So that resonates with me. What I try to do is I say, what is the energy behind this behavior?
Mm,
And, if it's just unbridled joy, that's one thing. If there's tension,
mm.
if there's like tightness in my neck, if there's a uncomfortable feeling in the pit of my stomach, in other words, what is driving? I know you had this conversation on a recent podcast. What is driving the striving? What's behind it? If you're just out there playing and really having fun, okay, that's one thing. But if what's driving the achieving is a feeling that somehow, if I do X, Y, Z, everything's going to be okay.
Right.
I'm going to be okay. So it's almost like, and I've done this a lot in my life, chasing after accomplishments to feel safe. Like if I can just prove myself, if I can be good at this, if I can achieve, then people will love me. Then I'm okay.
You also write a little bit about that too in this book of the concept, and I can't remember which chapter it was, but the concept of like when like actually authoring the book and like what that's going to create for us. Like what does that mean?
Yeah.
And we put so it's like that expectation of I think that's a really important chapter. I wish I could recall the chapter, but I think that's a really important for us to remember because so many people who are listening, who are a part of this Yoke and Abundance community, we have stuff inside of us that we feel a calling to share, and it's fun for us to share, and it's inside of us. But then we think that we're going to put this out there, and then it's success.
And I really am glad you're asking this question because to me, this speaks to the concept of arrival.
Mm-hmm.
Like we think that when like, let's take you as an example, you might have this thought and it might be unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
When I write my book, I'm going to be a respected coach or I'm going to be credible.
Right.
I'm going to be seen. I'm going to be heard. I'm going to be worthy. And what I want to say to you is you're worthy right now.
Right.
And that book is not going to make a difference. And if you, and I didn't really know that when when my poetry book came out, I was like already on like, what's the next project?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, like, what else can I do? Because it wasn't conscious, but it was like, I still don't feel worthy.
Mm. Bella, there's a coach that I work with sometimes, and she says that the gift of what we do, of the work that we get to do in the coaching sphere, or whether it's giving a keynote, or whether it's coaching someone or creating a product, she says the gift of whatever it is that you're doing is who you get to become in the process.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. But when you're writing, who do you feel like you become in that process?
I have so many thoughts as you're speaking. I feel like, we could talk for a long time. See, I don't think about who I'm going to become. I think about getting out of my own way.
Oh.
I think about taking my ego
Mm-hmm.
and hanging it like on a coat hook and leaving it alone, so that a greater intelligence can speak through me. Because it's not really me, like the truth is we're all connected,
Mhm.
and there's just, there's this deep wisdom that we all have, and it's a different voice from the author mindset voice.
Mhm.
And I think the key is trying to access that voice.
Mm.
So I don't think about what I'm trying to do. I except just get out of my own way and see what comes through me. And then I'm surprised. And I'm like, oh, wow. I didn't like sometimes with this book, I have a reading chair in the living room with a little basket overflowing with books, and I keep a copy of this book there. Sometimes I'll just pick it up at like around midnight, and
Mm.
I'll open to a random page and I'll start reading. And two things occur to me. The first is, wow, I feel inspired. And the other thing is like, it doesn't feel like I wrote it.
Mm.
So I think the key with the writing process is just let go.
Mm.
Don't, you're not in control. And the truth is in life, we when I was a kid, I thought when I was a grown up, I would have arrived. I thought, grown-ups know everything, and I'm going to arrive when I'm a grown up. And what I've come to understand about arrival is that the closest that we can get to arriving is being fully present in any given moment. Because then we're living life at the speed of life and not at the speed of thought, which is exponentially faster.
Mm. Oh golly, you just really touched something for me that I just think that's so beautiful. Here's what's so fun about getting to do podcasts is I don't know, there's always a moment where I just get verklempt in some way where I'm just like, oh, that's good. You just did it.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're so lovely. You're radiant. You're glowing. For the people that are listening, I'll just say that Alicia is glowing right now.
Thanks. Well, I love that feeling. And my, I know that personally speaking, that when I just let things flow through me is when I feel in the flow, when I feel in that just like it's coming through, it seems like everything else disappears. And that's a really neat feeling.
Yeah, I mean, think of a kid on a playground in the sand building a sand, mound or whatever. They're not judging the sand. You're not like thinking like, is this going to be a worthy sand mound? If I fill my bucket, is this going to be worthy? What will people think? No, they're just playing. They're feeling the texture of the sand. You know, they're looking at the different shapes they can make, the feel of it. And that's really like to be able to go through as an artist, to be able to go through life in that way, or even not as an artist. I mean, just to be able to really experience life, to meet it on its own terms without a lot of thinking about it is a
Mm,
gift.
yeah.
And you use the word weirdo, and I would say, I think that's a blessing that you have that great passion for your work, that you love it so much. And yes, it is hard to navigate the work-life balance.
Right.
But I see you really giving that a go, like you're really practicing that and you're experimenting. And I think that's awesome. And I get inspired when I see your little videos. You've been out for a run and you're all sweaty, and I love that. Because I'm like, yeah, just remind me to play, because we all need
Mhm.
that reminder.
Yeah. And it's funny when I put stuff out there on Instagram like that, often I'm trying to speak to myself.
Right.
I
Right.
think that's what a lot of us do, right? We all
Absolutely.
try
And
to
when as you're writing your book, I sometimes will literally in my journal, Elizabeth Gilbert talks about this. She does this a lot. She writes to herself from this, I don't know what she calls it. My word is I write to myself from my wise self.
mm,
So, I'll rant and rave for a while, and then I'll invite the wise one in to come and talk to me.
Mm.
And then she'll just say, dear Bella, and she'll start talking, and she will, she'll give me what I need. And oftentimes, very often, those letters become blog posts later.
Mm.
And those are the ones really that people, I think, resonate with the most.
Yeah.
Oh, I have to tell you something cool because I just got it last Friday.
Please.
Word Mothers is an online journal. Check it out. Nicole Melanson is the editor. And what she said about my book, she said, when I first got the book, my first thought was, oh my God, it's huge. But then my second thought was, it looks like promotional materials for a spa. And then she said, and that's just what this book is. She says, this book is a writer's day spa packed with restorative and invigorating treatments.
Oh my God, she's right. It is that.
And I love that because I'm a spa slut. Well, I shouldn't say slut, but I'm a spa lover. And there you go. So, and then she said, I enthusiastically recommend it for both emerging and established authors. And that just made me so happy because you never know how people are going to respond to your work. And honestly, if you're not going to let the bad reviews, which I haven't really had any yet, knock wood, but if you're not going to let yourself be knocked down by the bad reviews, then you can't really get too excited about the good reviews.
Right.
Because it's just, what other people are thinking. And I'm going to show up and do my work no matter what, because I'm responding to a call. Yeah. I'm answering a call to share with the intention of healing myself and others and being of service.
Absolutely. Bella, they're slightly shifting gears. There's a chapter in the book that I think is my favorite. And can you tell us what AFOG means?
Oh, yeah. That's great. I love the question. No one has asked me this question.
What? I love this.
I've had, I don't know, maybe 12 interviews. Nobody's asked me this question. I love it. So that's thanks to a student of mine whose name is Jack Carroll. Mm-hmm. And he's a retired attorney representing death row inmates. And one day somebody read something in class and he said, oh, another AFOG. And, after I spoke, somebody read, I spoke, he said, oh, just another AFOG. And I was like, okay, what is AFOG? And he said, an AFOG is another fucking opportunity for growth.
This is so good. Okay, talk to us about what you shared in that chapter. What do authors need to know about this?
Honestly, I have no idea what I wrote in that chapter. I couldn't tell you. I have no idea, but I could answer the question just off the cuff. What?
Yes, please.
I can speak about it.
Yes, please, please.
Like I said, I have no idea what I wrote in the chapter.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
So, those of us who are on a path, those of us who are seeking health, happiness, enlightenment, we're constantly looking for opportunities to grow, right? But unfortunately, growing isn't always fun. Oh. And in fact, I have noticed in my own life, when things are going really well, everything's just humming along sweetly, that's not the times when I grow.
Right.
So there's a certain amount of struggle in growth. Although what I've learned is that so much of that struggle and the suffering, I'm innocently creating myself without realizing it. And I'm doing that because I'm having a lot of thinking about what I'm going through. If I were to just meet what I was going through without any mental chatter, if I could just simply be with what is, then I would spare myself a lot of suffering. But like you said, we're not always in control of this stuff.
Right.
And sometimes we can't let go. Sometimes we just don't know how to let go. I have a funny dream about letting go because I feel like at the end of the day, letting go of not of control, but of the illusion of control is really helpful. I was going through a really hard time in my life. I had an anxiety disorder. We had 5 family deaths in 3 years. And I was executor of my mom's estate, and it was contentious, and I was in the middle of a fight. And as a sensitive person, I felt like I was feeling everybody's pain, and I had all these stories, and I developed an anxiety disorder, and I was afraid to leave my house.
Mm.
Now I just got distracted. Do you remember what the point I was making?
Around growth. And sometimes we innocently create it for ourselves.
Huh. Well, I can tell you, I lost the train of thought, but what I will say about it is that that was the most significant learning period of my life. Mostly because like the doctor wanted to give me medication, which occasionally I needed to use and it was helpful. But I mostly knew that my anxiety was there to teach me something.
Mm-hmm.
And what it taught me a lot. But I learned how I was innocently creating my own anxiety.
Mm.
And then I was able to help others with their anxiety, which was just kind of cool.
But yeah, so it kind of came full circle in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you discover something that's really wonderful that helps you, it's natural to want to share it and help others.
Yeah. The AFOG just tickled me so much in so many different ways because growth is a core value of mine. And saying that almost feels like I put a big bullseye. It's almost like I asked for patience, you know? I feel like I've gotten numerous opportunities to grow and they're not always fun. And so when I read that, I was like, oh, I wonder if that's something that authors do to themselves. Like, I wonder if that's something we kind of writers, maybe not authors. I'm using the term synonymously,
When
but
you say it, when you say it, what do you mean?
that we look for growth opportunities.
Oh, I don't think that's a definitely a trait of all authors. I don't think that is true.
Maybe authors in the in the personal development.
Personal development, absolutely. I mean, honestly, if a personal development author is not meeting everything, I'm going to post. Consciousness Magazine recently published an article I wrote, and the title is something like "Use Everything That Shows Up," including and especially the tough stuff, because it's usually that stuff that creates the most transformation and growth.
It's the idea of writing the thing that we think we cannot write.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, definitely, if there's something you think you can't and you can't say and you shouldn't say, that's what you must say.
Right.
Otherwise, whatever that is, which is probably really juicy and really good, and I can tell you a story about this.
Let's go there. Tell me a story.
Okay, my poetry book is called Secrets of My Sex. I wrote those poems like in my 20s and 30s. And I was just developing my writer's voice. And so what's the thing that a young woman, 30 years ago, couldn't talk about?
Pleasure, probably.
Pleasure. And take it a step further. Like, let's be specific. It was sex. Okay. So I felt the need to explore my sex life, which is what the whole book does. And I was and as I started to do that, it actually started with this poem called Mesa Road, where I did this strip. I was with a girlfriend in her backyard, and I did this, started doing this strip tease. Her brother and his friends came out, and I kept going anyway, even though they were there. And after the dance was over, I went. One of the cute boys came up to me, and he said, "I'll show you mine if you show me yours." And I pulled down my bikini bottom. I showed him my little hairless vagina, and he called me a filthy slut and ran inside the house laughing. Right?
Oh my goodness.
And then my sisters, so this got out, right? This got out around the neighborhood. And my sisters would always say, in front of my parents, to taunt me, they would say Mesa Road, which was the name of the street where this happened. They'd say it we'd be at the dinner table and they'd say Mesa Road. And I'd freak out. I was in third grade, okay?
Oh,
I was in third grade, okay? So this was a story that I actually had forgotten. I had buried it, forgotten it. And in my first creative writing class, I was maybe 28. I went into the class and we had this exercise, and that poem came out of me. And we were asked to read our poems in class. I read the poem and nobody said anything. You can find the poem on my website, I think.
I'm going to go
Road. Look it up. It's a great poem.
We'll
But
link to it in the show notes. Yeah.
What?
We'll link to it in the show notes.
Yeah. Okay. So what happened was I was so ashamed of myself because I had forgotten it all. It not only did it come up, but I shared it. No one said anything. The class went on break. I hid. This was UCLA Writers Extension. I hid in the bathroom the entire time. I later found out, my teacher said to me sometime later, I don't remember how much later, he said, the night you read that poem was the night that I fell in love with you. And I knew that you were special. But not that I'm special, because I'm not special. But he appreciated the fact that I took this risk. I don't know what he said at the time. He could have said, that was great, that was wonderful, that was brave, but I didn't hear it because I was freaking out.
Right.
And I'll give you one more story. So what happened was, so then that became like my signature poem. I read it everywhere. And the shame dissipated completely because shame needs secrecy to survive. And then I had one other thing. So I had this collection of poems, Secrets of My Sex. I wrote about everything. I wrote about all my sex life, except for one thing. There was one thing that I refused to tell anyone or talk about, write about, share about, and that was genital herpes. Wasn't going to share that. One day I wrote a poem about it, and it was with my collection of poems. And my friend who was reading my book and helping me pick the poems for the book came over. We were sitting in my bedroom. The draperies were open. There was a lot of light coming in. And that poem happened to have just fallen out of the pile. And I hadn't meant to include that poem. She said, what is that? And I said, oh, it's nothing. It's nothing. And she said, no, what is it? I said, oh, it's just a poem I wrote. It's really bad. There's no way it's going in the book. I said, Bella, like, is it new? I said, yeah, it's new, but I'm telling you, it's not any good. And blah, blah, blah. Finally, she grabbed the paper and said, I'm reading it. I had to take a deep breath. She read it. And when she was done, she had this confused look on her face. She said, what? I don't understand. Well, this is a great poem. Why don't you want this in the book? And I said, hello, I have herpes. Like, I can't tell anyone that I have herpes. And she said, are you kidding? She said, I have herpes. My sister has herpes. I don't know how many millions of people have herpes.
How did you put that? Shame needs secrecy to survive, right?
And silence.
Yeah.
And we have shame because we see, I love this. Brene Brown talks about the difference between shame. What was it? Shame and guilt. So guilt might be like, let's take the Mesa Road incident where I did the striptease, right? Okay. So guilt would be, oh, I did something bad. Shame is, I am bad. I am bad. I am unworthy of love. That's what shame does to us. And shame completely shuts us down. And so in my writing circles, I just like my number one priority in those spaces is none of us is here to judge anything. We can talk about how effective is the writing. We can celebrate the writing, how to improve the writing. But I mean, people have revealed secrets, big secrets. And it's a space of non-judgment, like the great quote, Rumi's great quote, out beyond the ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there is a field, I'll meet you there. And that's where I try to live. And, I don't always succeed. Much of the time I don't succeed. but it's a practice. That's how I try to live.
Oh, Bella, I'm so grateful that you've come to join us and share your wisdom with us today. You're so wise. What else do you want us to know about the book or anything in general?
If you're interested in going deep in your writing process, check out my website, www.bellamahaycarter.com. I have writing circles going on. My summer Wednesday circle is full. There's room in the Thursday circle. Uh, and then I'll be starting another series again in September. And the book is available wherever books are sold.
Great.
So wherever you like to buy your books, if you want to support your local bookstore and they don't have it, they can order it for you. And I think that's it. And
Well,
just,
oh, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, uh, look for your wisdom and look for your joy.
Yes. And we're going to link to your website, to your book, and to your poem in the show notes so folks can find them there. And last question for you is, how do you live a life of abundance?
Oh, I didn't prepare. I knew that you'd ask it.
Good.
Okay. Okay. So I haven't prepared. So my response to that question is, ask me the question again.
How do you live a life of abundance?
Life is abundant.
Mm.
So it's more like how do you not live a life of abundance? And the way that I don't live a life of abundance is when I let my thinking, judging, critical, doubtful mind hijack me and take me to the place of non-abundance and scarcity and fear and fright. But that's not the truth of who I am, and that's not the reality of life. Life is abundant. That is the very nature of life, abundance.
Bella, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me, Alicia. It's been great to be with you.